footy fans, another episode of Donnie's Disposals at your ears, and we have it again, round two of AFL review. And ladies and gentlemen, as we said, Ross is no longer going to be here consistently, so I gotta find myself some guest hosts. And conveniently, I have an awesome one coming to me from Melbourne, the Pommy in Oz, joining me from the Pommy in Oz YouTube show, and a massive Carlton Blues fan. Pommy, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I'm trying to help you find some foreigners here. So we've got the UN commentating on AFL. I'm looking forward to this, Donnie.
Oh, I had Rick Shaibani from the LA Dragons out in LA, who is an American, another footy head from mine, and I've got a few other Americans who I know up here in the States that are planning on joining me, but I couldn't not take this opportunity to have you on. You had me on your YouTube channel talking about the Swans earlier in the year, and I had a blast talking with you. So I thought let's reach out to Pommy and see if he will join us for a round review. So, sir, let's jump into it. Round two. This is mental. My tipping was interesting, shall we say. Just really quickly, your thoughts on what I have to say is a very interesting round of footy.
It's been a tough one for tipping. Usually, I pride myself on my tipping, and I think I'm oscillating at four every week so far. Just I don't have faith in the right teams, and I have too much faith in the others. But a lot of questions asked, weren't they? I think more than answered. Usually at this stage, we're starting to get very early doors. You kind of see what every team is doing, and few injuries late. Melbourne are an interesting one for me because I've been really bullish on Melbourne. I think the Grundy Gorn combination is almost impossible to beat, and we saw what would happen if one of them got injured, and probably the worst one out of the two got injured, which opens the door because this time last week Brisbane were cooked and they weren't going to make finals, and now we've got to take them serious. It's how football works in these early stages. We jump off sides and then we jump on them, and we probably won't know if we're honest till the bye.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm one of those. I'm trying not to jump onto bandwagons on some of these teams very quickly because these first five rounds are going to be bonkers. I mean, I think I remember last year I was on the power train. I thought the power were fantastic, and then the first five games, their season was pretty much almost lost. So it'll be fascinating to see how that goes. Again, a manic round of footy. There's controversies, there's great things, there's blowouts, there's great games. Let's jump into it. You are a Blues fan, so how excited are you as the Blues get an 8-point win over the defending premiers, 90-82? Sir, tell me how excited you are. A big win for Carlton after kind of a lackluster draw against Richmond in round one.
It was Beauty and the Beast round one to round two. Really, we grinded. We were very slow and methodical round one, and I think quite rightly the press and the fan base started asking questions. As Carlton fans, we're a tortured soul. We've seen good first seasons of coaches and then an adaptation in the second. I think there was fear we'd maybe adapted our game plan, but a return to the fast-paced football, free-flowing, more aggressive, more offensive. And in the end, I think the big thing for me, the big takeout is the two games this year for Carlton. If we're honest, last year we would have lost. Particularly round one, I agreed with Voss. I think we would have lost that by 6 this time last year. And I think Geelong would have ran over the top of us in years gone by as well. So it's nice to see a little bit of heart from the boys, a little bit of rigidness, which I don't think we've probably had last year, which probably ultimately cost us finals. So it's good to see them playing with hurt.
Yeah, and the best part too is I think they really capitalized on a Geelong team that I hate saying it, and I never like saying that one player is a big changer. But Tommy Stewart's injury, I think, really has thrown this Geelong team off. Yes, they had their two other injuries with Jasny, and there was one other injury that I think is out too. But Stewart, he's a linchpin for that defense. When he is out, there's something that goes haywire with this team. So, and you capitalized on that, which I think, as you kind of said last year, so many times late in games. Keziah Pickett. I mean, I know that for some people that sends shivers up their spines on Carlton Blues fans, but they just kept coming. Geelong, I mean, they're such an experienced squad. I mean, Jeremy Cameron kicking five and then having his rib issue that I thought actually popped up. So it's very interesting. But again, my hat tipped off to the Blues again. They're going to be a team that's just going to continue to be there. I like the style. I like this ball movement style. I think it really fits your group. And Charlie Curnow having a day out. I mean, as much as we had a discussion off mic that you don't think he's that great full forward that Harry McKay really is. I had to marvel at this young man because if he can stay healthy, he is absolutely almost unstoppable at times.
Yeah, I think Charlie Kerner, like obviously the picture behind me, everyone knows that I'm probably the biggest fanboy of Charlie. I think my thing with Charlie is I think his ceiling is so high. I think, if I'm honest, I think Harry's at his level. I think you'll see Harry where he is. I think there's another layer of Charlie to go, which puts him in the Jeremy Cameron category, where I think he already is on the precipice. I think obviously Jeremy Cameron's got the credits in the bank. I think Charlie can surpass him quite easily. And we saw this game from Charlie of his approach of being more of an opportunist this week. He only had the 11 touches, 5 goals, and everyone's raving about Cameron having 20 odd touches and 6 goals. It just shows what Charlie is capable of in tight situations. That's something that definitely this season we've seen Charlie can take a grab and take his opportunities. Where last year, sometimes he was a bit wasteful, even though he won the Coleman. I think for me, I agree with Robbo on this. I do think Charlie, pound for pound, is the best player in the AFL in the league by a stretch. And it was great to see Jeremy Cameron go to centre half back to play on him. When do we see two great full forwards actually go head to head as opposed to opposite ends? They were on each other, and that was great to see for a quarter as well.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really weird seeing Jeremy Cameron back there. So we could talk about the Blues all day. Again, another fantastic win, but we got to move on to. But I remember watching this because I had to watch this on delay. I was working at work and I didn't want to have any issues. So I ended up watching this game like 3 hours on delay later in the day. And I stood in awe watching this Brisbane Lions team. I think finally kind of playing what I think we all were told the entire offseason. Dunkley, Ashcroft, McKenna, all these additions that this was going to be a Brisbane Lions team that was going to potentially be a flag. They get a win by 11 over the Melbourne Demons, but I'm not sure which is the bigger talking point coming out of this game. Max Gawn's PCL injury. Thank God it wasn't an ACL. Again, never want to see anybody hurt, but at least it was the tamer of the two options. And then the absolutely insane situation with the blackout at the GABA that still has me cracking up of JB going, "Oh no," on the broadcast more than once. Thoughts on this?
It was a bizarre game. And I think the blackout probably helped Melbourne in the end because they got that extra 45 minutes to really sort themselves out because they were lackluster. It's an interesting one because, like with Carlton versus Geelong, I worry for teams when they play teams weak or weakened. I always think it sounds easier on paper, but it's amazing how often weak sides get up against good sides. And it was interesting because obviously they would have had a plan around Gorn. We know his dominance. Then to lose it, Grundy's a total different ruckman. And I thought that kind of exposed Brodie Grundy this game. He had a hell of a lot of hitouts, but I thought he was Brisbane's best player at times because his hitouts uncannily hit every Brisbane player that was out in the open. So that's obviously an adjustment for Melbourne. They're going to have 6 weeks probably just with Grundy, and he's going to have to sort that out. But fair play to Brisbane. Last week, I think everyone had jumped off them. I think the hype had died, and they responded in the best way because you can only beat what's in front of you. And I thought, you look around the centre clearances, they dominated that. So it was a good return to form from Brisbane and probably a much needed win.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's again, I look at that final score and I go, the blackout. They end up coming back later. They played the last 10 minutes, and there was almost there for a second in that with like about 3 minutes to go. I went, oh my god, if Melbourne comes back and wins this, what type of storyline is this going to prove for the Lions season? For the blackout to really change this game as drastically as it could have. Now, Brisbane got the win. I think it was kind of apropos. But if I'm faking a little bit, I'm a little peeved because this really there were so many things about I guess the Demons had like an extra 5 minutes of warm-ups that the Lions did, and there was all sorts of drama. I don't really want to get into that because it is kind of a lot of hearsay. I'm not sure. But it is interesting to see this, like I said, the final score only winning by 11, that the blackout really was the reason Melbourne got back into this game because it was 40 points when the blackout actually happened. So we won't waste time too much on that. Again, it's all kind of fascinating. All I know is it was interesting watching BT and them try to pad time while they tried to figure out what was going to happen, considering there was still so much. And then the fact that the cameras were showing, I guess, little fires up in the light tower. So it was a giant cluster, you know what? And it was just almost hilarious to watch it, even on the app, like 4 hours after the game had ended. So we jumped to the MCG, and wow, oh wow, oh wow. I know you're a Carlton fan, but how hard is this going to be? Collingwood look absolutely scintillating with a smashing of the Port Adelaide Power. 135-64, 71-point win, and Port goes from the highest of highs, knocking off Brisbane, to the lowest of lows, getting absolutely smashed. I sit here and I look at Port because I think I kind of could tell Collingwood's going to be one of those teams. They're just going to be good. Can they maintain it? And if you're a Port Adelaide supporter right now, what do you think of your team? Because you really don't know. You smashed a Brisbane team that looked really, really and then you get smashed by a Collingwood team that now everybody's going a flag favorite.
It's a tough one. I mean, this one is kind of it falls in the category of AFL media have kind of downplayed Collingwood, and I even though I'm a Carlton fan, I respect good footy. I thought AFL is probably the only sport in the world the media would criticise Collingwood last season for winning tight games. Traditionally, in the NBA, in the NFL, in my sport, soccer, if sides win tight games from losable positions, that's usually a sign that they're a great side. And it's probably, if we look back at every great side, the Bulls, we look at Manchester United, they were famous for winning the unwinnable. And that's a sign. AFL, they kind of treated them like these guys were, most pundits have them out of the bottom of the eight. Collingwood went out and got Mitchell, McStay, Bobby Hill, and you're seeing what good list management does. They got the best centre clearance player probably of the last 20 years who feeds quick runners. And them quick runners are who? Josh Dacos, Nick Dacos. And you're seeing that smash bash style last year with a little bit of grit in the hard bits and that the areas they weren't good at. I think Collingwood, to be honest, I hate to say it, if you're a neutral, probably play the best football to watch. It's very sexy to watch. Even I enjoy it and I watch it with hatred. And they are going to be a very tough side to beat because now they've got a mental edge over everyone. They know they can win tight games, but now they also know they can smash you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an ominous sign 2 rounds in already. 2 rounds in, that's very ominous for sides playing them because you're going to have to go hard and you're going to have to go quick.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. My only thing though, and I stated this to a few people, is does their game change if a Darcy Cameron or a Mason Cox goes down to where one of them's got to play the majority of the rucking? Because I mean, you can put McStay in the ruck, but is he going to be as dominant as Cameron has been these previous 2 rounds? We'll have to see again. That's my only worry. And then if they lose a Darcy Moore, if they lose a Nick Dacos, if they lose a Pendlebury, some of those like linchpin guys in the middle, or even a Mitchell, does that change this team again? There's 22 rounds of footy. We never know again. Plenty of things can happen. Could they even be peaking too early? Could they be playing their best footy and then they have a lull in the middle of the season? We'll really have to see. I'm interested on that one. Again, I'm not trying to find situations, but it's things that I think a lot of people are assuming that this is just going to be simple this entire season. There's going to be bumps and bruises. Nobody's going to go undefeated. It's damn near impossible to do it. It's can they stay as close to healthy as possible will be the $1 million question for them. And with Port Adelaide, I really want to see how they bounce back from this. I mean, getting a showdown almost is kind of a blessing in disguise, shall we say? We can talk about Adelaide a little bit later, but I think Port needs this. They need that winnable game to kind of get their confidence back because this shattered a few people, especially in Portland. That are they hype more than legitimate when it comes to a finals team.
It's a tough one for Port because the first round they were so impressive. They smelt blood from Brisbane and they destroyed them. Like Collingwood, ironically, destroyed them. They saw the vulnerability and they took it. And that genuinely, to me, is a sign of a good side. If they smell blood, they finish it off. This game, it was kind of almost like they never got out of second gear. And I don't know if they were shell shocked because Collingwood came out so strong. and maybe that threw them off. They were behind the eight ball almost from the open bounce, but few questions there from their stars. The big Greek freak, as they colloquially know him, Mitch, became more like the Greek league in this game. It was a great opportunity in front of the G to put his name, but he was poor, and that's the big problem when your stars don't fire. This game is so tight. I think 1-12, an injury can make 12 beat first.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100% agree. And I'm just interested to see I'm starting to see like posts of Jason Horn Francis kind of giving up. Like, is he one of those that do we question his desire at times? Like, if he gets down or if he gets frustrated, does he give up a little too quickly? Because there were too many situations that I saw on Vision where he's got a chance with a second effort to maybe put some defensive pressure on the ball, and he just no, I just don't feel like it. It just walks. So I'm interested to see. It was were North Melbourne actually more accurate on Jason Horn Francis's attitude than we maybe we'll have to see on that one. I don't want to question again. I don't like bashing these young guys, but when you see that stuff on the Vision, it makes you question him just the littlest bit. So we go from Port over to Adelaide for the Adelaide Oval, where the Richmond Tigers go on the road, get a big win in a game that, I mean, this was like a roller coaster. Richmond just roars out to a nice little lead. Adelaide kind of sits on their hands for the about first two quarters. And in the third quarter, Adelaide, I don't know what got into them. I don't know what Stevie Nicks said at halftime, but they literally came out in fuego. And then the fourth quarter happened, and Richmond went, no, I don't think so, and put this game away. But I could not believe as I was watching this game, I was like, I could not believe the up and down nature of this game of footy.
I watched this game and I felt an ominous sign for Richmond that this was 2017 Richmond, that they can go out to a lead. You kind of watch them and you're like, they've lost this. But then they have that secret sixth gear. It's almost like someone presses a button in the coach's box, and they generated 8 scoring shots in 10 minutes, got 3 goals too. That is the Richmond I wouldn't say know and love, but we know and appreciate. We know what they're capable of. And it's going to be an interesting one because obviously they're not going to play a mentally fragile side every week like Adelaide. I think Adelaide have got a lot of questions themselves. This week, I hope Richmond are full strength against Collingwood. It looks like they're going to be losing quite a few players, because that would be the game where you can really get a good yardstick read on what Collingwood are against the masters of aggressive football counter-attack. I think Richmond Collingwood on paper, if they're fully fit, is the game where you can ask the question: are they good enough to take apart an attacking team? But Richmond, to be fair, they're just going about their business quietly. Usually there's a lot of hype about them, but feels like Carlton and Richmond probably did each other a favour. The media dropped off both of us, so
Mm-hmm.
we can now go about our business. But I thought that was an ominous sign from Richmond, how they controlled that game.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch them develop again. My worry is I think Dusty Martin went in for scans, so I worry that maybe he's out, which I think if I'm Richmond, I'm dreading a little bit, because one of your most elite guys that comes up always big in big games is probably out. One of your best defenders in Noah Broad just is probably going to be suspended unless something haywire goes in the tribunal after the sling tackle, which I really don't want to get into that, because I swear these 2 weeks there's a tackle or a situation that everybody has to discuss. And I feel that we can sit here and we can say it all we want, but all we're going to do is get more frustrated, because the tribunal never seems to make up its mind what it wants to do. I will leave it at that. I'm not going to go any further with that, because it is an interesting topic when it comes to each of the teams. Adelaide, just they frustrate me, because you look at some of the talent that they have on this list, but they're let down in the midfield, because as I listen to some of the, like, I listened to the Rush Hour out of SA, and I kind of agree. They have no midfielders that are elite with footy in hand. Jordan Dawson is elite, but he's more of a center half forward, or a center half back, a half forward, half back flank. He's not really that center midfielder guy that they need. Keys is not that. Laird is not that. Sloan is not that. So it's like they really don't have anybody in their midfield that really is elite going forward. And you've got the guys like Isaac Rankin and Taylor Walker and Darcy Fogarty that, I mean, if they get good service, they can put up goals like that. So I'm just interested to see what Adelaide's going to do, because right now Rankin has not been able to get into the midfield and make an impact. He's been gone forward. So Adelaide's just another. I have so many questions about them. I worry that is Nixie is Nixie up in over his head a little bit, because a lot of Adelaide fans are starting to get frustrated with a team that's got a ton of talent. They've made some moves, but did they make the right moves? Was Isaac Rankin the guy they really needed, or was it somebody a little bit more structured in the midfield that can kick the ball into forward 50 and be that great penetrating pass to those really good forwards going up front? We'll have to see. Richmond again, so good. I'm interested to see how they go this week. Again, it's going to be a litmus test for both Collingwood and Richmond to see how they go. We jump from that to the next game that I don't know what to say. I really, really don't know what to say, because this Western Bulldogs team, I heard so many things about this team. They got Liam Jones. They're gonna be that they've got the defender that they needed to make them the elite team, and it has not worked at all. And I have no idea what to say, because Rory Lobb, you bring him in, surgery. After a week, he's going to be out. Yeah, what do I say, Pommy? This is a Dogs team that, if you look at it on paper, this should be a top four side, a team fighting for the flag. And they literally, after 3 rounds, could be in a giant hole and potentially may even miss the finals if they don't figure this out.
I find the doggies the most protected team in the AFL. I think if you look at everyone talks about Ken Hinkley needs to get sacked. We're starting to see Nicks get should he be sacked. You look at the doggies team since they won their flag, and usually when you win a flag, you start to go up a gear. But they snuck into finals. Bevo famously said, "We probably shouldn't be here. We've got a 4 week plan." They won it, but then it's been 10th, 13th, 7th. Do you know what I mean? 7th, 5th, 8th. And last year, let's be honest, they probably didn't deserve to play finals. Carlton managed to gift horse it and
Mm-hmm.
gift wrap it. And I look at the way Beveridge handles that team, and that team, like you say, on paper, we should be talking about it like it's Melbourne, Brisbane, Collingwood,
Mm-hmm.
Carlton. It should be a fearsome side, but time and time again, I think they are exposed, and they're not exposed like the other sides we've mentioned by great football. They were destroyed here by Ross, who is the master in basics. It was very easy for St Kilda, and I fear for the Dogs. I look at their side and I see a lot of players that are kind of what they are, with a very talented midfield. And I think if St Kilda can make you come unstuck with that much ease, imagine what a Collingwood, a Carlton, a Sydney would do to these guys.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I don't mean to not give St. Kilda their credit, because I'm going to say right here, what St. Kilda is doing. I know Ross Lyon, everybody, Ross the boss, and he's going to be a defensive coach. How is he? Is it past him? All this. I know we're only 2 rounds in. Has St. Kilda played the toughest schedule in the AFL? No, they haven't. But honestly, you gotta tip your hat to him. He is putting in a coaching masterclass. He has taken a team that is absolutely obliterated, obliterated with injury, and they are 2-0. They are 2-0. How many people can you sit here and say thought with their injury list going into round one would tell you that St. Kilda was 2-0? We would have put you in a mental hospital. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So all do happy in hat tips to my man Ross the boss and Matthias Philippou, young man from South Australia. Absolutely fantastic performance. And I I'm fascinated by this St. Kilda team, because think about this. I mean, they've got 14 guys in the injury list. Wait till they get some of their injured guys back. Like this, St. Kilda really has a discussion. I know we're 2 rounds in. Let's not recency bias a little bit. Could this St. Kilda team be a team that makes the finals? I have a hard time arguing that they don't really have a nice argument that they could.
Well, I mean, it's no massive surprise. I think that Ross is going to be tough to break down. That was the lowest inside 50 count West Coast have had for almost what feels like a millennia. I think the big thing though about Ross was the question mark. He kept saying he's a changed coach, and unfortunately, no one gave him credit. I'll hold my hands up. My wife's the biggest St Kilda fan. I didn't give him credit. I thought we were going to see 18 men behind the ball and a ball fest. But what he's a master of basics, rigid structure. They're very tough to break down. And then he's looked at this list, and the injury list makes the LA Lakers injury list look good. Like that's how many players they've got out. You look at how he's formulated that. He's seen where his talent is. Got Wanganeen Milwari, you've got Jack Sinclair, you've got Cal Wilkie. He's built a very quick transition side, and they're already 3 times scoring more now than under Ratton from goals in transition, which is a scary thought when you've got big boys to come back in the forward line to kick to. At the moment, they're using kids. I look at this side and do I think they'll play finals? Probably not. I think they'll eventually come unstuck. But one thing I'll give Ross is you're going to have to earn your win. And that's probably the weakness of St Kilda last year. They're a very structured side. And you know what? Great to watch. I like a little bit of tactical structure, and fair play to Ross. They look a good side.
Yeah, they've been fascinating and fun. I'm really interested to see. So we go from that one of the three teams that we'll discuss a little bit later in my burning questions, but now to the second great storyline. OMG, North Melbourne has as many wins this season as they did all of last year, as they are also 2-0 with a hard fought, gutsy win over in the West over Fremantle 73-72. I know many people are going to discuss the end of the game. I'm going to go like this. I think I can't sit here and say whether the umpires got it correct or not, because I've seen vision of it being one way and then I've seen vision being another way. So I'm going to say it like this. North won this game because Fremantle didn't take their chances. Again, Fremantle so notorious of kicking so many darn behinds that I think it's hard for me to sit here and say that they agree that they deserved to win this game. So I, Clarko, I mean, oh my gosh, Clarko looking like one of these European football managers on the sidelines, calling holding the balls, raising his hands when his team scores a goal. I don't know about you, but I'm loving happy-go-lucky Clarko that isn't in the box. It's entertaining as all get out to see him so happy, and for his North Melbourne team to be 2-0 after the first two games of the season.
We talk about Ross's change in demeanor and tactically, and I think Clarkson's shown a couple of years out of the game. He's probably mellowed a bit. He's getting around these young blokes, and people have that question: who's the greatest coach of all time? I think if Clarkson wins a flag with this mob, I think the conversation is officially over. And look at how they're playing. They're playing adventurous, attacking football. A lot of people have these bottom two, maybe bottom four. They're coming out, they're taking the game on, outscoring their midfield by 30 points. LDU looks sensational. Yet, to be fair, I think it would have been a robbery if Fremantle won this game, because I hate sides that play a quarter of football and win a game. And to be fair to North, they held against a huge resurgent Fremantle in that fourth, and that's going to be a lesson for them. But it's great to watch because I think no one had these threatening. I mean, if you St Kilda were 2-0, if you also picked North 2-0, you were a time traveller.
Well, and the crazy part is we still have one more that's 2-0 that I think a lot of people were not expecting. We'll talk about here in just a little bit, but I'm getting a giggle out of this. Like I really am. Like I'm happy. I have a ton of North mates who I go back and forth with, and to see their joy that they're 2-0, I don't think they're worried about how the rest of the season goes, because there's a lot of positivity in North Melbourne. But I will go to this. I think this Fremantle team, I think they're starting to kind of unfortunately reap the fruits of an off season where they lost a ton. I mean, I think the Luke Jackson edition is still one that I'm gonna give it a little bit more time before I jump to conclusions on this, but I'm still a little iffy on whether that was a good call for Fremantle. And just some of the losses that they lost from that team, the Blake Acres, the Griffin Logs, they're not the same team that they were last year. I know this is a Fremantle team that made the finals last year, got a win in an elimination final, and got to a semifinal. But this is not the same Fremantle team. This is a different team that has different issues. And Coach Longmuir is going to have to figure something out because right now he can't go forward. And when he does go forward, they're not kicking goals, they're kicking behinds. And defensively, they're not the way they have been. So I'm fascinated to see what Coach Longmuir does because this is not a good start to the trend. And with the Western Derby coming up this week, it ain't getting any easier, especially after we see how West Coast does a little bit later on in the round. I will joke with you, go a little bit behind the mic a little bit. Pommy before we got started goes, how excited are you with this next game as the Sydney Swans hand a thrashing to the Hawthorne Hawks by 81, 118, 37. And I can't tell you how many mates of mine reached out to Donnie. What do you think of the Swans? And I went, I'm happy, but I know, unfortunately, I hate to say it, it is the Hawks, and the Hawks are really making me think that they are going to be wooden spooners this year. And again, I have many a Hawk fan. I don't like saying that, but what I'm seeing and what I saw in this game, I have a hard time seeing that it's not going to continue. The Swans were just a better team. They just played such champagne footy. Nobody, no problem. 9 goals between Armadi and Logan McDonald makes a few of my friends go, is this your preview of what the Swans will look like next year when Buddy retires over the offseason? Great game. This probably should have been a bigger win. I know it's weird to say 81-point win, but it probably should have been a 100-point win. But they kind of let Hawthorne have a little bit of a purple patch in that last 5 minutes or so. But Swans win. Good win for me personally. It's a percentage win, but I'm not going to put a ton of stock into this. I mean, Pommy, what do you think? I mean, it's hard to argue this Hawthorne team. I don't want to say they're tanking, but they're definitely what they did may make it kind of seem like they are.
It's a tough one as well because they were so ruthless. And I think, Sydney, historically, when you get destroyed in a grand final, we've seen historically sides never recover. We've seen Adelaide, we've never heard of them since. GWS, they're becoming Gold Coast Suns in orange at the moment since their grand final. It's a big question mark. And I think the way that you guys have responded the first 2 rounds, I think has probably given them the confidence because I would say forward line was horrible in the granny and it looked like you couldn't generate any scores. And they've probably been your best line in the first 2. And staggering 80 points scored from turnover in this game. They were ruthless to Hawthorn. And at times you wanted to throw in the towel for Hawthorn because it felt almost obnoxious. It was like watching under 15s versus under 9s.
Mhm.
But big shout out to Joel Amati and Logan McDonald. 15 times they were targeted, 9 goals, 3. They were ruthlessly efficient. And you know what? If they can keep that up as well, they kicked 16 behinds. You were quite lackluster in front of goal. If they can generate that much, that's a good sign for round 3 moving forward because they've had a cracking start.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult. Like I said, I'm looking forward to this round against Melbourne. I think it's much more of a kind of a litmus test, shall we say, of the Swans team. Again, it's good to get the win, a ton of confidence, and again, it's that little glimpse of what next year will be if when Buddy retires after this season. But I'm I still think there's still a place for Buddy in this team. I think he will still draw the best defender, which maybe will open up. We have to see Logan McDonald or Armadi when they play with him have a few better performances with Buddy in the lineup. We'll have to see. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one because it was pretty comprehensive if you really look at it. So we jump the next one, and the third and final surprise to many people would be the Essendon Bombers as they get a big 28-point win over the Suns, 108-80. And again, sir, check this bingo card out. How nutty was this? Essendon, St. Kilda, North Melbourne, all 2-0 and all in the 8 as we speak. Again, 2 rounds in, I know, but this is mentally just throwing me off. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, you look at the 3 sides, 3 new coaches, North, St Kilda, and Essendon, and what's interesting, they all have something in common. They all monopolised on turnover, particularly Essendon and St Kilda, which there was question marks last year about intent from both of their sides. And it was a side. even though I hate Essendon, I want a strong Essendon because I think it makes the league good. Carlton, Essendon, and Collingwood all fighting for top spot. I looked at them in that game we played them last year, and I've never seen such a weak, wet lettuce performance on a big anniversary. They look shell shocked. They look like they weren't willing to fight. And then I look at Essendon now, and you can see Brad Scott straight away. They're disciplined in the corridor. They're strong. They're willing to fight. There's a pride in that Guernsey, and they should be. As much as I hate that red and black, it's got great history. There should be a lot of pride to play for that club. And, fair play to them. They made the Suns, in my opinion, look where they are. They're a very talented bunch, but do they have the heart for the fight? And Essendon just outfought them, simply outfought them, and were too good in the end.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And again, it's almost a little bit like St. Kilda. It's Wiedermann's out. They've had some injuries. Tippa is out. So, and to still put up another ton score on a team that usually is not bad structurally behind the ball. Stewie Doo has brought a little bit more structure to the Suns team. It's not the rabble that it has been. But again, this is the Essendon of a couple of years ago. They score and they go and they go, and it's so much fun to see this team play. It'll be fascinating. Again, once they start facing some of the stronger teams, we'll kind of see where they sit. But it's so cool to see. Like I said, Essendon, St. Kilda, North Melbourne, 2-0. It's just mental, but it's so cool. So, and then the last game of the round sees West Coast finally get a W as they beat the Giants 181. And I kind of agree with what some people said. I think that game against Adelaide last week, where the Giants put so much in such excruciatingly hot conditions, I think caught up to them in this game because in the fourth quarter, it looked like GWS had zero legs. But I have to say this, are the Eagles changing? Because they sure looked like they were moving the ball a lot freer back and forth on the footy field than they had it in previous years, where I think that was one of the biggest questions on Simpson was, is he holding on to old footy and not embracing new style? And this week showed maybe Simpson is making a few changes.
Well, I mean, the big one was Jermaine Jones off halfback, adding a bit of foot speed and a bit of directness. And I think people look at Simon, you look at 2018, where they won the flag. They've always been a ball retentive side, and they've always been very careful with their ball movement. It's been kind of annoying sometimes when they were high because they could be 10 points up with 10 minutes gone and then start them kicking chains, and they could keep the ball for 2 hours. They're very good. I think what we've seen from Simo this week is they do like that kick style. They do like to retain possession, but we still saw 2018 when the zones split up because of that heavy kicking style. They take the game on, and Jermaine Jones took the game on. Dom Sheed looked good, and what was great was after what feels like a lifetime, Tim Kelly to be given a more offensive role and take the game on. And Tim Kelly looked like he was enjoying himself finally. It looked like Geelong Tim Kelly getting the ball out in space, taking the game on. I, I've never hated West Coast. I don't feel anything for them. I do look at this side and I hope it goes well. And you know what? It was a big win because I think GWS and Eagles probably two of the biggest question marks this year. Are they a bottom four side or could they threaten the top eight? And I think we got a few questions answered here because I think GWS are in a world of strife, to be honest, when I watch how they play.
Yeah, I think they benefited a little bit from an Adelaide team. It's still trying to figure out what they want to do and how they're doing it 100%. So, and I think, like I said, I'm happy to see Simo get a win. I'm glad to see he's embracing a few of the changes because I think it makes for a much more entertaining product, especially when the West Coast Eagles are on my television. But I'm fascinated by this to see how this continues to go. Will it continue or will he revert back a little bit if stuff gets tough? So be fascinating. So that is going to do it for the 9 games from round two. Again, a fascinating one. So we move on to my normal segment we call burning questions. And I'm going to start off with a smile, Pommy. I got to ask this. What team is your best story so far of the three 2-0 teams, North, St. Kilda, or Essendon? What's your best story? I know you're a Carlton supporter, but let's show some love to a team that's 2-0 that probably wasn't expecting it.
I definitely think St Kilda. I think there was all the question marks about Ross coming in, archaic coach, very old system. injuries galore as well. Like anyone who's, I mean, they're getting to the stage that they're going to raffle it to members to play for them at the moment with their injuries because Steele's now out. But the fight, the desire, and there's a bit of pride in that St Kilda jersey. I didn't give them a prayer for 2-0. North, Clarkson, I can understand it. The guy is the GOAT. Essendon, who did they play? I thought they could probably win that game even last year, but with Scott, they're rigid. But St Kilda, they've beaten two sides that have been highly touted, Fremantle and the Doggies. I think most people, even St Kilda fans, if they're honest, were 0-2. They've beaten both and both quite easily as well. It might be added. It wasn't just wins; they've comprehensively beaten them.
Yeah, I remember we were doing my draft for the fantasy league that I GM up here with a bunch of Americans. It was 12 of us, and I remember sitting down as we were discussing it, and I pulled up St. Kilda's injury list, and I said they're going to have 14 guys on the injured list going into the round one. And I just in the back of my head, I went, "Ooh, Ross is not going to start off this season real good." And then they get the first game, the first win over Fremantle, and a team that I kind of didn't shock me because Fremantle had so many question marks with some of the guys they lost. But a Doggies team that honestly, when I tipped last week, I thought they'd bounce back. I thought they would come. I thought they'd figure out whatever issue they had with their front line after the experiment with Lobb and Ugelhagen and Naughton and all that up forward just didn't work round one. And for him to get another win and then to lose Jack Steele to a broken collarbone, which we later found out he played on after breaking it, and then got the scan and found out that it was broke the way it was. I'm with you. I think it's St. Kilda just because I mean I kind of agree with you. I look at it West Coast. I think I tipped North in that game. I thought North would win it just because West Coast doesn't always travel. And then when after Fremantle's insipid performance against St. Kilda, I was a lot more bullish on North. I tipped Fremantle, but I said North wouldn't surprise me if they go and get a win because Fremantle again has issues going forward. But St. Kilda, my God, that this is just such a cool thing. And for Ross to be so happy about it, and again, to see the injury list go, there's still guys to come back into the squad. I'm very fascinated on St. Kilda. They're going to be one I keep an eye on. Again, Essendon, Scott coming in again, you kind of knew that there would be some structure. I think they also as well Hawthorn, as we can kind of see, is most likely going to be a Spooner. And then a Gold Coast team again. There's still so many question marks. Are they ever going to live up to the talent that they have on their roster? So I'm fascinated how this goes, but all three are great stories. But St. Kilda would be mine as well. So we go from the highest of highs of 2 and O's to the lowest of lows. What 0-2 finals team from last year, Western Bulldogs, Fremantle Dockers, and Richmond Tigers, who are 0-2, or well, technically Richmond is 1-1, 0-1. What's the team that is in the most trouble right now?
Doggies with our shadow of a doubt. Like Fremantle, you can kind of understand that. Did they recruit anyone to solve their goal kicking crisis? No. In short, not really. They signed a kind of forward in Jackson, so it's not a surprise that they are there, and that's what Fremantle do. They play tight games and they win some tight games, they lose some. Doggies, I mean, the Dunkley deal, I think will bite them, but then I look at what they brought in, and not footballers for a team that I think are a top four, top flag winning side, and they look totally lost. I don't know if Bevo's lost them, if he's lost the players, but when you've got a midfield with Bont and McRae and Liberatore, you should be in games. You shouldn't be getting run over by the likes of St Kilda. I think they're in a world of strife, and their next couple of weeks, teams are going to feast playing on them.
100%. I agree. I think the doggies are the most in trouble. I think Fremantle will figure it out. I think it's going to take a little bit of rejigging when it comes to that forward line again. I also agree. Just Jackson is not a forward, and they needed some forward help. And losing Akers and Griffin Logue, I think, surprisingly for Fremantle letting him go, I think are big losses. But I can't. I just the doggies are just they are in a world of hurt, and I don't see any relief coming anytime soon. So I mean, it's pretty obvious, sir. You're a huge Carlton fan, so I thought I'd throw in a Carlton question in the burning question. So I asked this: did the win over Geelong restore your confidence in this Blues team to make the finals this year and maybe make a run?
I think I've always been fortunate enough that I never lose faith in the boys. I think they're a very talented group. On reflection, last season, I thought that was probably the best thing they've ever had because I think that at times Carlton could probably blame exterior sources. I felt last year was a great opportunity where it was all in their hands throughout from the bye, and they constantly let themselves down. And I think that them kind of situations in sport and in life, when you let yourself down, are very easy to rectify. They go one way, they either destroy you or they make you a better side. And I thought, knowing the boys like I do, they would learn from it, and that pain of it was in our hands. We screwed it up. Would galvanise them. I thought round one was a question mark for me because I love the tactical change, and I thought we showed why Richmond have always been called impotent if the ball isn't in motion, and we showed that. But this week, coming out, these are the games I worry about. Tom Stewart was injured last year, was suspended last year, and Geelong battered us. Let's be honest, they did it in a canter. Always worry when Carlton play a vulnerable side because I think that's where maybe the mental fragility comes in, where they should win, they don't. Yeah, I'm happy. I feel like the boys have learned something, and um, opposite of it, doggies, they've got 4 weeks of real tough games. Carlton now have got 4 weeks of games where they should feel like they're favourites, and this is where we'll get the next question: Can Carlton do what Sydney do the first two rounds when they are the favourites? Can they punish? And that's the next layer from my boys going from being ninth to fourth to flag winning if they can punish teams. So looking forward to this next 4 weeks. They've done well so far.
Yep. These are the weeks that you try to work on the percentage, and you make a few experiments because you know you should win. So you make sure that your team is cherry ripe coming into some of those great games. 100% agree with you. So, and then we'll do. I know we'll do tipping a little bit later, but I gotta ask this: what's a game in this next round of footy that has got your eye besides Carlton?
Two scream at me this week. I think the first one is Collingwood Richmond, hoping Richmond don't have mass outs. At the moment, it looks like Short might miss, looks like Buddy might miss, but I think that would be a great litmus test for both of them sides to see where they really are because I think their styles. It's like Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather. You've got one massive puncher who's aggressive, one counter puncher, and I think it'd be a good test of both systems. And the other one that really excites me, and which probably is, I wouldn't have said this time last week, was St Kilda versus Essendon.
Mhm.
The 2-0 players teams. One's going to be presumably 3-0, which would be huge. I think that's a great little test there. Scott versus Ross the Boss. I am actually looking forward to that 7 o'clock fixture.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I'm so fascinated by this Dougie's Brisbane game. Being at Marvel Stadium, does Bevo finally get his head out of a body cavity you really shouldn't say online? And does he do something? Does he do something to change his team's way they go and maybe shock Brisbane, who sometimes when they come down to Melbourne have some issues? That's a game I'm looking forward to. I'm with you. Collingwood Richmond. Again, Richmond was the team that started the high manic pressure footy that everybody loves to play now. So can they find a way to get Collingwood to defend much more than they have been because they have been so offensive this season? And I mean, I'm with you on this. St. Kilda Essendon. I mean, this has got my ears pricked big time because this is a game that could literally set up a team for a chance at the finals. Whoever wins this, because they're going to have 3 wins under their belt, a super ton of confidence coming into it, and a lot of eyeballs on this game because everybody's going to wonder, can Ross do it again? Can he find a way to get a win? And can the old ball coaches of Scott and Ross clash heads? It's going to be fascinating for me since I probably shouldn't say Sydney and Melbourne because that's my team. But I mean, I'm fascinated because I think that's going to be one that it's going to be a litmus test for Sydney. Sydney's had two relatively what some would say easy wins. How do they go against a legit finals team that should be there when the whips are cracking? I mean, if Sydney does to Melbourne what they did to either Gold Coast or Hawthorne, then we have a discussion. Then we have a discussion for a lot of people. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm interested to see if May plays. If May plays, I think that does kind of change the game a little bit. I mean, Gaughan's injury is going to affect the ruck battle. I mean, Peter Laddams Grundy is going to be an interesting ruck battle because both are pretty athletic, both move a lot on the ground. They're not just going to ruck tap and then stand around. So it'll be fascinating to see that one. So a lot of ones, a lot of good ones. So we jump from that, sir, to I as we were talking offline before, is I do a team of the week, and I'm so excited on my Instagram to do this because I just got my graphic from my absolutely outstanding producer Ross, and I got to say I shared the images with Pommy here, and even he kind of got a nice little smile on what I had to show that the master that is Ross actually sent me for my teams. So let's jump into it. Team of the rounds, round two. And again, I kind of told him my metric a little bit. So I'm interested to see what you think on this, sir. We go start in the defenders. As a coach, I always like the defenders. With start off Collingwood's Nick Dacos again. I mean, this kid is absolutely, I mean, mesmerizingly good. I mean, the opportunity to potentially win a Brownlow medal for this young man, hard to say that he's not going to rack up some votes with the way he plays on that. Richmond's Liam Baker again. He finds ways to kick goals for Richmond, and always he's that little engine that could for Richmond that I absolutely love. St. Kilda's Jack Sinclair, Fremantle's Brennan Cox, who went forward and kicked a goal late in the game. So as a defender, you get a goal. I'm gonna give you a little bit of leeway. Fremantle's Brennan Cox, again another fantastic performance. Luke Ryan, and then Norse Harry Sheasel. I mean, the game sense to kick that ball away instead of giving up a point and getting a draw, I gotta tip my hat. That is incredible game management there on that. So, interesting defenders. We go to the ruck, Tim English. I mean, he taps it so well again. He's one of the few bright lights that the Western Bulldogs have. We jump to the midfield. Clayton Oliver, 37 and a goal. A guy is absolutely mental at what he can do at the footy field. Collingwood's Josh Dacos. I got to give a tap to him. The Dacos brothers both absolutely went hog wild in this particular game against Port Adelaide. Norris, Luke Davis, Uniacke. I think this guy has 6 votes in the Brownlow. It is hard to argue. He has been the best player on the field in both of the games he has played. Sydney's Callum Mills sneaks forward and kicks a couple of goals for the Swans, and West Coast Tim Kelly. As you said, I got to give Tim Kelly, seeing him have some fun playing footy is fantastic for the game. Forwards, making you smile because he's got his picture in the background. Charlie Curnow from the Carlton Blues. Geelong's Jeremy Cameron. Sydney's Logan McDonald. Essendon's Kyle Langford goes forward from the midfield and kicks 5-2 in that. So kind of give him a little bit of a tip. West Coast Jake Waterman. And last but not least, on the starters, GWS's Toby Green. When I go to my bench, again, I do a defender, a ruckman, a midfielder, and a forward. So that's kind of explain these ones here. Cooper Hamilton of the GWS Giants gets my defenders. Again, defender goes forward and kicks a goal. I'm going to give him a little bit of a shout out. Gold Coast Jared Witz will be my ruck. Again, he always finds a way to play really, really well. I think he's a very underrated ruckman in the competition. Brisbane's Will Ashcroft gets the midfield spot. I mean, young man shows up and plays a really good game against a very good Melbourne midfield. And then on the other side of that game, the forward, Melbourne's Ben Brown. He cut his hair, and unlike Samson, he continues to have his goal kicking powers. Ben Brown will round out the end of my team of the week. I gotta ask, Pommy. I know that we were kind of explaining my metrics to you. A very interesting team and a lot of talent there. So it'd be fascinating to see that team line up and play a game of footy.
It would be, yeah. I mean, it's always good, isn't it, to do these like fantasy scenarios. I think as a round ball kid, I think we spent our entire childhood getting on FIFA and making our dream teams and
Mm-hmm.
battling them out against each other as kids. It would always be great to see. I mean, there's some good players there. Um, I think you've been harsh on Adam Sard and Jack Zeeble, but I appreciate your metrics. I think it's a great conversation starter this because I reckon if you got 100 AFL fans to pick a 22, you would probably have 95 different 22s.
Yeah, I agree. Sod was right there. Sod was right there. I really wanted to pick him, but Shiesel got my last, and Shiesel got my last spot. Just like I said, 30 disposals and just a couple of incredible plays for him there. So, and again, Jack Zeeble, again, is a really solid player. Sometimes the midfield, I'm splitting hairs to try to find out how it goes. But again, it's always fun. I love the feedback. It's absolutely fantastic. So we jump for it. We got to do it. I know we're still early in the week. The injury notice hasn't come out, but we got a tip. So let's jump right into it, sir. Right off the bat, like I said, Thursday night again. The Lions get a backup another Thursday night as they get to go down to Marvel Stadium down in Melbourne and play the Western Bulldogs. I mean, I think I know how you're going to tip this one, but I got to hear what do you think? Who's winning this one?
Brisbane by 4 goals.
Alrighty, Brisbane. I think I have Brisbane too. Again, I don't like the Dougie's mojo right now. I don't think this is something that's an easy fix, especially in a short week. We jump to it, as we said, the absolute blockbuster, Collingwood at the G against the Richmond Tigers. I'm going to go Collingwood in this one, but I think Richmond puts a little bit of a scare into Collingwood. I think the talk that nobody can stop Collingwood will change a little bit. I think Richmond will be able to hold them down a little bit, plus their pressure, I think, may be able to test that Collingwood defense. I still think the Pies get the win, but I think this is a little bit closer than some people think. I got the Pies.
Yeah, I'm backing you in there. I think the Pies. I think the Pies will. I think they'll have a battle, but I think the Pies will ultimately maybe send a statement. I look at this game and think it's a statement either way. But
Mhm.
I've got a feeling that the Pies might finish this one emphatically. We're going to hear Collingwood all night on the Friday chant. I can see it now. We're going to hear the roar, and I think that might be an ominous round three. I think Pies might make people sit up and take note in this one.
Definitely, for sure. We jump down to Tasmania, Utah Stadium as Hawthorn host North Melbourne. Some people could say revenge. I don't think Clarko is going to really focus on this. Who do you got? Does North go 3-0 or does Hawthorn kind of break out a little bit and bust that zero out of the win column?
I think this game probably means more to Sam Mitchell than it does Clarkson. I think Clarkson's way too old and mature to worry about settling scores. I think Mitchell may push these boys a little bit. So I expect a better performance from Hoff, but I think you'd be mental to not pick North, to be honest.
Yeah, I think North's got better mojo. I think North's got much more positive vibes in it. I think they've played better footy. I think there's just too many issues I still see on this Hawthorn side. So I'm gonna tip North as well. We jump to it. We'll tip your game, sir, up to Giant Stadium as the Giants host your beloved Blues. I've got Carlton. I think GWS they kind of they pulled a rabbit out of the hat against Adelaide a little bit. Carlton's too good, too talented, too strong. I think Kingsley's still working on a few things. He's still got a little bit of time. He's going to take a few lumps here in these next few weeks. So I got Carlton and you, sir.
100% Carlton, yeah, Blues.
It's always fascinating sometimes if I get that right. It's like I'm going to test you. It's heart versus head. So I kind of knew you would, especially in this situation, but I had to ask. So, alrighty. Again, the Cracker at the MCG, St. Kilda hosting the Bombers. Who do you have in this one?
This is a tough one. This
Hmm.
this is a real 50-50 because it could go either way. I think Setterfield is going to be the difference maker here. I hate to do it to my wife and also to my blue baggers, but yeah, Essendon.
Interesting. I bounced back and forth in this one. I just I think the mojo is St. Kilda. It's something it's hard to argue. I think Essendon's been a little bit of a benefit of some weaker teams. I'm gonna go with the Saints in this one. I don't know what it is. I think they just continue with this chip on their shoulder. Yes, they lose Jack Steele, but it's been another man step up into spots. So I'm gonna tip the Saints in this one. As many Bombers fans as I know quite well, I'm going to tip the Saints in this one. I just think the structure of Ross is going to be able to hold up. So jump over to the Adelaide Oval and the showdown in a showdown that I think even some of the Adelaide and Port fans are going, what type of showdown are we going to get? Because it's always a cracking game. There's always some spice into it. I just think Port, though they got humiliated by the Crows, are just going to be a little too much. I'm going to tip Port in this one, but I think it's another absolutely awesome showdown. I think it comes down late in the fourth quarter. So I got Port in this one. Who do you got?
I think the prison bar jerseys, they're making a return this week. I think that's going to give them the added impetus they need. I think Port will win this one, and they'll forget about their trip to Melbourne, and everything will be right in Ken Hinkley's world for a week.
Alrighty, up to the Gold Coast as the Cats make a trip up north into the Gold Coast to play the Suns. I've seen a few people throw this as one of their upsets. Do we see an upset, Gold Coast or Cats in this one?
No, I think, in my opinion, I think the Cats have been really harshly treated by the media. They've played two, whether you want to admit it or not, bona fide top eight sides,
Hmm.
and and with injuries, with structural issues in game. So I think the Cats way too comprehensive. Gold Coast, even maimed, I think the Cats will come back, and 2-1 they'll be at the end of this round.
Yeah, I'm with you. Cats win it, but I think the Suns keep this close. I think if Jared Witz can get going in the rock battle, I think it's going to even out this game for sure. The question is how does the Geelong defense handle the kind of forward structure that they have up there with the Suns with Casbolt? Does Chol come back? It'll be fascinating. I just think the Cats are too good. I think Jeremy Cameron might be able to step up. I worry a little bit if Cameron doesn't play because Hawkins still seems underdone. I don't know what it is. If Jeremy Cameron doesn't play, then the Suns are in with a sniff. But if Cameron plays, I think the Cats just too good. I'll tip the Cats in this one, but this is my keep an eye on one. This is definitely my keep an eye on one. So back down to the MCG for Melbourne v Sydney. Technically, this is my turn to go first, and I hate these games because I feel like when I tip Sydney, they always find a way to disappoint me. And when I tip against them, I get a ton of crap from my friends, but for some weird reason, it works. I'm gonna define myself even a little bit. I'm gonna tip Sydney. I think the loss of Gone is gonna change this game a little bit. Is May 100%? If May isn't 100%, this is not a good time to bring him back with Buddy potentially coming in fresh off a week off. The Swans' pressure, I think, causes them issues. Their young midfield that is hungry, and I just think they're looking for that big scalp to start the season. I think this is a perfect time to get Melbourne again. I don't like facing a weakened Melbourne, but this is a good time to get him. I think Sydney wins this, but I still think this is a cracking game that comes down to the late in the fourth quarter.
I think you've nailed it. I'm tipping Sydney here against my better judgment. I think maybe 2 weeks ago I would have locked in Melbourne for this one, but I just get a feeling that the storyline is in your favour. It's your first game back at the G, isn't it, since the fateful day
Mm-hmm.
against a very, very good side in Melbourne. I think you'll want. I think also have you guys wanting to put on a show. Just reminding Victorians, you guys are the serious deal, and I think this will be the game you desire, Donnie, where you get faith in your boys and the lid comes
Mm-hmm.
off a little bit.
Well, I think a little bit too. I think a lot of people forget that I think Sydney is built for the MCG a little bit more than the SCG with their kicking style and the way they kind of attack and off the run off halfback. I think it fits the bigger ground a little bit more. So I think that's the fascinating thing is they tend to play the G really, really well. I mean, until that Cats game, they had gone down to the G several times last year and it had won most of the games they had played at the G, including two wins over Melbourne. So I think Sydney's built for the G a lot more than I think some people expect. So again, Swans are a good team. Again, my hat tip off. Melbourne is going to be tough. This isn't going to be a cakewalk. The first 2 weeks are going to be. I just think Sydney gets G'd up for this one because they kept hearing all summer they're going to fade, they're going to choke, they're going to fade, they're not as going to be as good. Since 1995 no team has ever played really well after getting smashed in the grand final. And I went, look at this team. This is not like most of the other grand final teams. This is a young team that just they got caught up in the grand final and got nipped by a really good Cats team. I think that the profile of this Swans team I think is going to defy a lot of people this year. It'll be fascinating. Last but not least, we end it with I have to say the most interesting Western Derby I have ever come into because this is a coin flip. 2 weeks ago, I'd have told you I'd have tipped Fremantle and Fremantle easy, but after Fremantle's first two games and West Coast getting a nice win over GWS again, it's GWS a little bit. I'm I'm coin tossing this one. Who do you have? Because I've almost flipped a coin because I don't know who to tip in this one.
This is definitely that game where it's like you kind of, before you tip it, need to know which Fremantle and which Eagles turn up.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be great if the coaches could just tell you what their state is in training mindset wise, but Fremantle are way too good to go 0-3, and I'm tipping it with zero confidence. But the Dockers, in a nail biter, cling on to get the chocolates and get their much needed win.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. Man, I bounce back and forth with this a couple of times. I'm gonna go opposite than what I would have tipped a couple weeks. I'm gonna go West Coast. I liked what Simpson changed. I still don't like what Fremantle's doing forward. I don't think they've figured out how to play Jackson correct. I I just I don't like the mojo out of Fremantle, and I like what Semo has changed. Veteran team, it's a derby. I have this weird feeling. I'm gonna tip the Eagles in this one just because I think the veteran leadership is going to be something that's going to kind of help them out big time in this game. It'll be fascinating, but man, this is going to be an interesting Western Derby for sure. So, Pommy, that is going to do it for our episode. This is just so fascinating. I think I'm interested to see the comment section when they see an American and an Englishman talking footy on a footy show, reviewing the Australian Football League. It's absolutely fascinating, but it shows you that with a lot of passion and a lot of you can find a way to talk about anything. So I want to really much thank you so much for joining me on this episode today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you very much for having me, Donnie.
Yeah, and I absolutely have loved working with the Blue Abroad, and especially you, sir. So if you need anybody to preview that Swans game, you just reach out, let me know. Would love to hop back on. Had a blast working with Terry last year on the show for Blue Abroad. So, and I'd love to do it again because I found it was such a good conversation that I had an absolute blast. So that is going to do it for our episode, ladies and gentlemen. Again, round 2 is done. Round 3 is coming up. Keep an eye out. The VFL and VFLW have gotten started. So next week, keep an eye out. We will have a review of rounds 1 and 2 of the VFLW, plus this AFL review, and much, much more coming from the Sandful and Waffle W and Waffle competitions. Again, doing state league reviews this year. Keep an eye out. We're going to try to cover as much footy as we possibly can. I cannot wait. Gonna be a fun summer. Keep an eye out. So that is going to do it for our episode today. We'll be back again very, very soon with another episode of Donnie's Disposal.
Here's the song. Arms in the air. Donnie's gone through. Jamie Elliott has won the game of footy for this famous club. The legend becomes immortal. Smith at his pocket pick. Shea Boldy couldn't connect, but he